Welcome back to the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. Today on the show, we have Bobby Voicu. He's the CEO of MixRift. I guess it's a mixed reality system for gaming and for other stuff. What are you guys working on, Bobby?
We're actually working on mixed reality games. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We're basically building games for what Meta calls mixed reality and what Apple calls spatial computing. So yeah, this is what we do. We try to make you spend as much time not doing productive work as possible.
Okay, that sounds like a lot of fun. Actually, it's kind of like this podcast. So you
The
guys just
podcast is productive if you think about all the learnings that you can get out of it, right?
Yeah, I guess you're right. So yeah, unfortunately, it's unproductive for me, but it's productive for everybody else who comes on and tells their story. All right, so very cool. So tell us about mixed reality. What's the difference of that versus VR versus AR, all that stuff?
So the way I see it, if you're looking at a spectrum of extended reality, like everything that's additional to our reality, you have a spectrum between virtual reality and augmented reality. Virtual reality is when we basically take over your environment. All of a sudden, instead of being in your office or your bedroom or your living room, you're in a cave or in a castle or I don't know, a space station. And that's virtual reality. Everything happens in a different environment. Augmented reality, simple augmented reality, let's call it, is when we add a little bit of information to your reality. Let's say you're walking down the street and you're seeing a building, and all of a sudden, through augmented reality, you can see maybe the price of the building or the square meters or the surface of the building or something like that, or the GPS, right? Whenever, if you walk and let's say you have some augmented reality glasses, and instead of looking at the phone, all of a sudden you can see an arrow right on the street that you need to take a right. Mixed reality is somehow in between. So basically, we do not take over your environment, but we add elements to your environment that don't exist and shouldn't exist there. Like if you have a monster in the middle of your living room, you should not have that monster in the middle of your living room. If you have it normally, well, I don't know where you are, but I don't want to be there. So basically, this is mixed reality, or as Apple calls it, spatial computing, right? Where you basically add things to your space, things that normally aren't there.
Okay, so a game in that situation. Describe like a game scenario, because we all understand walking around in a dungeon, and we kind of understand the augmented aspect, but like the monster in the thing, are you able to fight the monster? Does
Yeah.
it trip over your furniture? All that stuff.
So one of our games is called Hell Horde, and basically you're in your room and one of the walls becomes a portal to the underworld, and all of a sudden you have monsters coming inside your living room. So if you're far enough from the portal, from your wall, those monsters will start running around the living room following you. We're really early when it comes to the technology of it. At this moment, unless you particularly tell your device that this here is a table, this here is a wardrobe or something like that, most devices don't recognize those. Apple, with their Apple Vision Pro, is working on it, where they analyze your space and they can see that there's something there, not necessarily what it is. They can identify it through AI, I assume, but I didn't see it yet. But I feel that in like a year from now, there will be technology available for consumers that will recognize things in your own space.
And you guys just raised 1.6 million. What was that process like?
I mean, raising money is never necessarily fun. I had a previous gaming company which I raised money for. I raised around $3 million for that company. And that was grueling by comparison, because I was an unknown quantity. I spoke to maybe 100 people before we raised our seed round. By comparison, for MixRift, I talked to 12, maybe 13 people, and I raised from 5 of them in just 7 weeks.
Nice.
So there is something, the first time when you're raising money, people tell you, well, once you become successful and you've done this, it's going to be easier the second time. Well, for me, it proved true. It was easier because I was a successful founder, because we sold the previous gaming company. It was in a space that we knew. It was in gaming. My co-founders in this company were part of the previous company as early employees. So everything worked together to make it a potential success in the eyes of the investors.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest issues. I don't think a lot of people understand that you essentially de-risk the investment for them, right?
I truly hope so.
Mhm.
But yeah, at least they look, because it's interesting. Some of the investors in this business, about 3 years ago, I wanted to raise for a company in a different space. And some of the investors in this company didn't want to invest in that. They knew me, they knew how capable I was as a CEO, but they felt that there wasn't what they call founder product match, right? And they were right, because in the end, I didn't raise money for that. I decided not to do it because it wasn't something that I was excited about. We got to the point where we could have raised, but I decided not to do it because of that.
It's an interesting point. I don't think a lot of founders understand that. What led you to understand that, okay, this is not the product to raise for. Let's figure something else out.
I wasn't excited about it. It was something because I saw a need in a market that wasn't, it was in the professional networking market. And because I work in that market, I'm part of, let's say, the audience that's on LinkedIn. I thought that, I see this potential need. I could build a product for that. And I believed about me that I was more interested in the business process rather than the product. And that wasn't, I realized while raising money and talking to people, I realized that, yeah, I'm interested in the business process, but I would rather put that together with a space that I'm truly interested in.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. That's something that a lot of founders ignore. What are you going to do with this 1.6 million? What does it take to build a mixed reality gaming company?
Gaming is, first of all, we need to understand that gaming is entertainment.
Hmm.
Entertainment is a hit driven business. It's a hit driven industry. This is why the biggest in movies, everybody's trying to build franchises and tentpole movies. So it's something similar in gaming. And in order for us to be able to do that, we need to be able to find out what games are interesting for our potential audience. So what we're going to do with this money is build a team that's quick enough to build as many prototypes that allow users to test different game mechanics. It seems like a lot of cliches and a lot of
Buzzwords.
buzzword. Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. It's a lot of buzzwords, but it's exactly this. In order for us to understand what works in gaming, there are two types of building games. There are two ways of building games. One is you build a game long term, like the AAAs, like the GTAs of gaming. GTA 6 might take more than 10 years from start. And the other way to build it, which is more for indie developers and more for smaller studios, is to test ideas, create prototypes that can be tested by a larger number of people, and look at the numbers, look at the analytics of how they play that game. Because if you put a game there that you show to 1,000 people, let's say, and only 100 choose to play it, that's probably either you completely misunderstand your audience or you completely misunderstand how to present the game to that audience. So you're looking for that understanding, the game mechanic to the audience you target. Once they start playing, you start looking at their retention number. How long do they play? How often do they come back in a prototype? Because if they do not find the prototype fun, it doesn't matter how smart you are, it doesn't matter how good the team is, you will never make it fun. But if a game mechanic is fun, people will play it even if it's not graphically pleasing or anything like that. Like our game, Hell Horde, that I was telling you about, we can see people playing it, even if it's an early prototype, and you can see that the graphics are rough. But they are saying, I hope these guys continue developing this game. I hope these guys make more than that, because it's obvious that there is something there. We have people that come and play and again and again and again without us doing anything other than showing them basic mechanic of that game. So basically what we try to do with the money that we raised is to build as many prototypes as possible, as many early versions of these games as possible, and understand which one of them is the most fun for our audience. And once we do that, we obviously start to build on.
How do you find that group of testers? Where do you guys look?
Actually, because of the numbers that we're talking about, millions, tens of hundreds of thousands of people, this is what you need basically to say that a game is successful. Finding 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 people to play your game is not that difficult. You can use ads, let's say Facebook ads, or you can use Facebook Meta ads, or you can just go to where the audience is. We promoted our game on Facebook groups. We just went to groups and said, groups for people that use Meta Quest devices, and just said, look, we just launched this game. Maybe it's free. Maybe you want to test it. And then it was word of mouth. People just found it.
So if it's a good game, it gets lots of word of mouth, and it kind of expands from there.
I believe so. And we're at the early level, at the early moment in the life of the game. But if you look at a game like, I don't know, you probably don't know, but there's a VR game called Gorilla Tag. And Gorilla Tag has like 1 million players every day. It's made $100 million in the last 3 years. And that game was basically mostly word of mouth and viral videos. And yeah, you can have that kind of success at some point.
Is there any way to recreate that experience with, say, I don't know, just a regular website, like a regular service? What's the best way to do that sort of testing? Have you experienced, or is this a unique case? Let's say
I'm
let's
sorry,
let's
I don't understand the
let's
question.
say you did your networking product. Would you be able to do the same thing? Would you be able to get the same kind of technical virality, or is it because
I
it's because it's games, is that important?
feel that the audience is different. For a game, you need, again, hundreds of thousands, millions of users to play the game. And I think that if a product is a business to consumer product that is in a similar type of space, not necessarily gaming, but I don't know, if you want to build Facebook again or something like that, yes, I can think you can look at the virality and the network effect. But the product that we wanted to build previously, I don't think it's as much. Yes, it would have been, because the network effect is that the more of your network is there, the stronger it becomes. And you have an interest to bring your network into the product. But if the product itself is not a product that can be viral, I don't think it will become. And games by their nature, the games by their nature are like this. And even look, you know, friend.com, the AI, the AI product where you have a friend, you have an AI that's your friend. It became quite viral with a video with the founder talking about how he bought the domain name for $5 million or something like that. I don't remember. And I think that you can create virality for a product, but I don't know if that virality
converts,
transfers to the product itself. So yeah, you can create things around the product that make it viral. Like, in a way, us announcing our round creates a buzz around the product. But most people that read about our round will not become our users. So I think it's sometimes there's a problem in understanding the difference. You know, a lot of startup founders, I think, don't understand the difference between people talking about their startup and actually people using their product. And for me, when I'm present in this podcast, let's say, or in something similar, I'm not necessarily talking to the users of our games, to the players. I'm talking to the industry, because there's an advantage of being known in the industry. There's an advantage of knowing the right people in the industry, and that can help the company. But the products themselves, they need to have viral component in themselves to be successful this way.
Cool. All right. So what's next? So you have your the hell game. What else is coming out from you guys?
So we have 2 games right now, one called Fractured, one called Hell Horde. We're going to launch in the next 2-3 months. We're going to launch 2, 3 more prototypes that we're working on. We want to test different mechanics where we have some multiplayer mechanics that we want to test because we think that this kind of devices are better suited for multiplayer. Because I don't know if you remember in the Apple Vision Pro announcements, a lot of people were like, oh, you have the glasses, but you don't see the people around you. You're not so social because of that. And I think that has a component of truth there. But on the other hand, most of the people that use those devices actually like to play multiplayer games, and the experience is better, I feel, than even when you play multiplayer games on consoles or stuff like that. So we want to test those things. I'm not telling you the names because we're still looking at how to name the products.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look for Fracture and Hellhorde.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll break out my VR glasses. I mean, that's the interesting thing. I haven't used those. I haven't used any. I think I have an Oculus at the house. We have another one as well, Lenovo. We haven't used it, and it sounds like it's popular, but it just hasn't. It's difficult to see where the market is.
Let me tell you something. When you're saying it's popular, there were around 25, so we don't have the actual numbers. This is from people in the market, right? There are around 25 million Quest devices sold. This is Meta Quest 2, Meta Quest 3, and Meta Quest Pro, which is the previous Oculus devices. And most people, when they hear about it, they say, well, they're not that successful. The last generation of Xbox S and Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S, they sold just 21 million products. And I understand, yes, the retention is better for the consoles. It's like double the retention for these devices, but it's not that much of a difference. I feel that we're at the point where these devices, the Meta Quest in particular, because they built an entire platform there, I think that those devices can sustain small to medium gaming company. Yes, Ubisoft tried something with Assassin's Creed there, and then they said, we're not going to come back to VR for a long time. But I feel that at this moment, extended reality games, so VR, mixed reality, I think they have a market that's big enough to sustain a company like ours and even bigger than us. I mean, think about it. Gorilla Tag, which is obviously is the top, they made $100 million in 3 years. I mean, you can't really say that that's not a real
Exactly.
business.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, but I think that, and we don't have to litigate this whole thing. But I think the idea of the $100 million hit, is probably rarer in that space, right?
From yeah, that's true. And
In terms of time.
from my information from the space, there are around 20, 30 companies and small teams that make upwards of $5-10 million a year in this space. And again, we're so early in the space that these companies, once we find the mass adoption devices, which in my opinion will be a form of glasses, once we do that, it's like the wave raises all the boats.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
I think that all these companies that can survive right now in this space, which is big enough to help to allow them to survive at this level of revenues, I think some of these companies that you look at in the space right now, in like 5 or 10 years from now, will be the king of this space, or I don't know, the Rovio of this
Sure.
space,
Sure.
or
Sure.
Scopely. So
Yep.
yeah, like this is the bet.
All right. Well, hopefully the Fracture gets $100 million this year.
Yeah, I hope the company itself, not necessarily Fracture. Fracture is a puzzle game. I don't think the market
Okay.
is there for this puzzle game. But some of our titles, I hope that I don't want necessarily this year, but I would be okay in 3-4
All
years
right.
from
All
now
right.
to
All right.
make 20,
$100 million,
$30 million
three,
dollars
four
a year.
years. You're
Yeah,
perfect. All right. Sounds good.
yeah, yeah.
Bobby, thank you for joining. This has been pretty cool.
John, thank you for having me.
All right. This has been the Startup Show. I'm John Biggs. We'll see you next episode.